What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Long time no see, gang. Short little 45-minute break there. Had an opportunity to feed the pets, lock the cat back up, make sure everything was updated in my model, get things ready for lineup building. Got some wild hairs going on behind my ear here. Man, do I need a haircut. We were talking about male pattern baldness on the baseball show. Definitely doesn't impact the around the ears area. Larry C's here, Dennis Forgy's here, our pal Dennis, XX Cubs fan, Bob Loblaw, Calvin Dunn. What's going on, guys? Handful of people here so far. I'm sure we'll get a few more coming in. Just resent the tweet. If you guys get a chance, retweet those tweets when they come out. We've got projections up on the site for the interesting one-gamer. A couple of good defenses in this one. I think that's kind of the underrated story. It's also yet another ugly, ugly day. So we could see, I mean, not the ineptitude necessarily, because these are two good teams rather than the New York Giants who were playing last night. But as far as the limitations of offense, as far as the ugly football, as far as the ball slipping out a little bit more than normal for some of these players, I think we could see a little bit of a repeat from that one. So, just a little bit of additional concern there. But two very good football teams, two very good defenses, 1 and 2 in projected DVOA defensively in this one. So I think that's kind of an underrated talking point. If I'm looking at my projections compared to some of the industry averages, most importantly for Josh Allen, I'm a little bit below the industry average from what I'm saying. I think it's a more conservative spot. He was a little bit more limited in terms of passing last year. Obviously got a lot done on the ground, but it wasn't quite as elite, I don't think. So, I mean, we're talking about, we'll get into it. We'll go into the different options from both teams. But I think there's a concerning amount of ownership on Josh Allen. He's very, very good. Most likely going to be the best player in this game. Don't get me wrong. But when we talk about, especially DraftKings lineups, where we don't necessarily want those QBs in that captain spot anyway with the salary multiplier, I think it gets really concerning, and I think there are good reasons to, maybe press pause, maybe get a little bit under the field on Allen, spread out some of those captain shares, especially on an ugly day with a lot of skill players involved. Some decent-looking options on the board today. I'm going to be trying to build lineups while we do this, so I'm actually going to, as I'm talking here, let me just punch in. I got to punch in my ownership caps here real quick on the old RG optimizer. So typically I'll talk about that a little bit while I do, because I've talked about construction and everything quite a bit in terms of the main slates, in terms of how I build stacks. We've got the groups in the stacks article that I'll improve that one going into to next week. Presumably I won't be up for 48 straight hours on Saturday going into Sunday, and I'll have a little bit more time on my hands to get in there and really drill down into, for the Sunday update, drill down into like the specific bumps and everything that I used to provide in that one. But what I don't really get into is like specific player by player, like what am I doing as far as the ownership thresholds, the ownership caps, in there. And that's an important part of the process. Typically for main slates, I'm really thin slicing positionally when I build out my 300 lineups at a time, which is the max in the optimizer. I like to set a lot of the skill players really low in terms of ownership, and I'm talking about like 10%. Right? I really want to cut it down because I'm building out 5,000 lineups that I then sort. So if you leave somebody at 20% across 5,000 lineups, you're just going to get way too much of them if he's a highly projected guy. So I really, really thin out the pool. That also helps create a lot of mesh, a lot of different combinations. And it's the same thing for these showdown slates. You've got to leave it a little bit broader just so it's got room to be able to build the full amount of lineups. But that's the best possible way in my mind to catch a lot of these oddball plays, these guys that are low projected but have the opportunity to get 3 to 5 targets, catch 2 to 3 of them, and put a little bit of a score in there. And if they happen to get in the end zone, it's a major piece of differentiation. The guys like the Rishi Rices, the Bells of the world from the Thursday game. So thin slicing ownership in your optimizers is really the best way in my mind to create differentiation. I also use a heavier amount of randomness, and I also for Showdown I use 2 unique players. I just set it at 1. For the main slate builds, but I've gone back and forth on that. I think it's perfectly viable to go as high as like 3, so that you're just getting a lot of natural differentiation in your lineups. I do like using the team randomness feature as well on the full slate. Obviously, that's not important on a showdown slate. You're going to have some of both teams. Although on last night's slate, we wouldn't have wanted a lot of New York Giants. So I'm just trying to talk through this as I'm doing it. Of course, as I was talking through all of that, I didn't enter one single value in the thing here. So let me just go down this. So like, for example, for just going down the list of wideouts, I also take out anybody who's projected below a 1. I think I mentioned that. Those are typically just going to be your guys who are buried on the depth chart, some special teamers, and those sorts of guys. But like a Jason Brownlee on the Jet side, he's projected at 1 FanDuel point in my model, 1.19. But he goes in and he gets an 8% ownership cap. He gets the same ownership cap that the 3 players above him get. That's Khalil Shakir, Deontay Harry, Trent Sherfield. Obviously, we're talking about lower end depth chart a little bit receivers. But those guys all get that much. And then everybody above them only gets 12%. So I'm really trying to keep everything thin sliced to create a big shakeup within the lineups that I do build. And then I run off, if I'm going to try and get out to about 3,000 lineups as I'm doing this. And then I create my sorting process and I drop all those lineups into the sort. And the sort makes sure that I get the appropriate amounts of the high-end players, the guys that you truly want, and a good handful of the lesser guys, because those are the guys who create that differentiation. The important thing, and I brought this up on the main slate show on Saturday, when we hit both the Rashee Rice and Blake Bell plays the other day, having them both in a lineup became critical. Even though they only put up, it was like 7 points each. They got in the end zone. Each of them got in the end zone at very low ownership. So as an example, on that FanDuel slate, one of them was owned like 2.3% of the time, the other like 3.5% or something like that. When you mathed it out, it came out to just having both of those players in the same lineup, which is, again, somewhat limited in terms of the overall upside. But on that slate in particular, it worked out. Having both of them cut the competition from against 192,000 lineups to just against a few hundred, like 300 to 500 at most. And it was probably well leaning toward the 300 side of that. So if you can do anything like that and you hit that pick, you gain so much value. It's all about how can I get away from the field? How can I trim this field down to a reasonable number of competitors? And then it becomes a matter of how does the chalk get around it? I said on that show, I had that combination it turned out to be in just one lineup together. I had tons. I was 15% of both of those guys, but they only ended up together once, which was a mistake on my part. Would have paid out better if I had them both in more lineups. But like I was talking about on the main slate show, what we're looking to do is create a little mesh of players with these value plays, so that when they hit, the chalk just needs to fall in appropriately around them. So one more Amon-Ra catch the other day down the stretch, I would have had a nice 6-figure payday. That's where the luck factor comes in. That's where, hey, this is the guy who's out there every play, whether or not he catches 6 passes versus 5 passes. I mean, that's what you want to be zeroing in on. Try and focus on drilling the value plays. Let everything else fall into the mesh for you. Larry C says, on DraftKings, do I leave money on the table? I would. Absolutely. I play, as you know, Larry, I primarily play on FanDuel, but I leave tons of money on the table on FanDuel. I think it's perfectly viable on DK. It's a little bit less likely that that's going to happen on the DK slate just because you soak up so much value with the salary multiplier in the captain spot. But if I had a viable lineup that had a reasonable ceiling, was well projected, looked like it was going to be away from the field, and I think that's, especially on DK, a good way to get away from a lot of the field. We talked about that the last time. The first the first easiest thing you can do to differentiate, most casuals, most people entering 1 to 3 lineups, hand building, not watching shows, not following projections, just I like this guy, I like Josh Allen, I like this Aaron Rodgers guy, Garrett Wilson, and then Dawson Knox scored touchdowns at tight end, so I'll throw him in instead of the more expensive or the less expensive guy that'll probably be better that I've never heard of. So a lot of casuals just take really light approaches to that, and they try and spend all their money. So yeah, I think, Larry, to answer your question in a roundabout way, yeah, that is totally viable. Let's say hi to everybody. Let's see. We said hi to Den and Calvin, Bob. Ken Woodhouse is here, and we're back. Yeah, exactly. Chance says Trent Sherfield is the loser I'm playing instead of Chalky Hardy. I don't see that's the exact kind of decision I'm talking about. You make one decision like that, and you just get away from a guy. I think a guy like Trent Sherfield is absolutely on the board. All you need him to do is get targeted 3 times, catch one of them for a deep touchdown, and you're home. Right? That's what we're looking for. Showdown in particular. I said it the other day. I'll say it again. We want to embrace the possible on Showdown. It's very different from what I normally say. I'm normally looking for the probable. Showdown, it's the possible. Oh, I didn't know that there was no MLB show across town today. How about that? Hopefully we picked up some views. Looks like the gang's all here for the most part. We've got just, the one gamer, nice and easy, casual way to go through. I've got it divided team by team. Basically, everybody shows on the screen. I think all the players are on the screen. Are we just missing the other kicker? Can I stretch this so that it includes the other kicker and stays on the screen? Oh, no, he is in there. All right, cool. So we've got the full player pool is available on the screen. How about that? Let me actually finish building my lineup. So I'm going to be a little bit back and forth until I click this lineups building process into gear. So let me get... All right, I got all those guys. Just bear with me half a second here, gang. I just want to make sure I don't have anything stupid in my player pool, because I'm going to kick off the lineup building. And away we go. Every now and then, somebody remind me in the chat to go back and build another pool of lineups. I'm just going to build 300. I'm going to keep leaving the pools up there. At the end of the show, I might pull up my my sorting process, just show it real quick as I drop the lineups into the sort there. But let's talk players. Let's get into some of the values on the slate. The big meatball at the top of the board, obviously, is Josh Allen. He's going to be crazy highly owned on both sides. As we talked about, primarily, for the most part, going back historically, you want to have skill players in those captain spots on DraftKings and not your quarterback. But you do always want to have at least one of the quarterbacks in the flex role. Josh Allen is the kind of QB that can absolutely go out and win a slate in the captain spot, though. The QBs that run are a little bit more valuable, get there a little bit more frequently. So I wouldn't go away from Allen in the captain spot, but what I would definitely think about doing is just undercutting. Undercut some of the ownership, get out to some Stephon Diggs in the captain spot even, some Gabe Davis, some Cook, some guys from the Jets, whoever they might be that you want. Garrett Wilson, the Breece Halls or Dalvins of the world. Get to some defense in that captain spot. I do think it's viable today, given the defense just, won last night in similar rainy, nasty, ugly conditions. I didn't play DK, but I assume defense won the day on DK as well last night. Definitely was a critical factor in the FanDuel lineups that I saw. That was an ugly one. Giants just did not hold up their end of the bargain, so it was weird to even throw that one into the mix. I think we're getting a better performance on both sides today. 44.5 point total. Jets 2-point underdogs at home, but really, really close. And that's what I mentioned at the top of the show, just to highlight it. The Bills are going up against the number 2 projected defense by DVOA, and the Jets are going up against the number 1 projected defense by DVOA. That doesn't necessarily lead to defensive scoring, but with the impact that it's having, the impact that the quality defenses on both sides are having, is we're a little bit under on Josh Allen. We're a little bit under, I think, on Aaron Rodgers, although I don't remember where the industry had him. But definitely on Josh Allen. I think he's primarily in around the 20s. So we're about 2 points behind in the field on him. And I left it. Like I said yesterday, I'm going to leave my stance. When the model makes a stand, unless there's a good reason to go away from it, I think it makes sense that I'm going to leave it in here. And I want to be providing differentiated numbers. Otherwise, just go use the sites you've been using, right? It's like, that's how we're going to distinguish ourselves. I think we've hit on a couple ones early in the season. Got a couple of them got mentioned in the chat. So I'm going to continue doing that. I think Josh Allen is a little bit behind the curve from where the industry's seeing him overall. That said, he's one of the top overall fantasy performers at his position in the entire league. 7 rushing touchdowns last year, giving you 47 rush yards a game from the quarterback position, averaging 7.8 rush yards per attempt. There's nothing to dislike about Josh Allen. 25 passing touchdowns on a 9.2 intended air yards per pass attempt with some really nice deep options in that lineup in Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. To a lesser extent, you've got the Shakirs and the Sherfields of the world, but Sherfield, 10.9 yard average ADOT last year, career high 2 touchdowns, 417 yards. Khalil Shakir, the rookie last year, 9.8 yard ADOT, 1 touchdown. If he falls behind the curve for ownership, I think I want to get a little bit of Khalil Shakir here. And they've got DeAndre Hardy, was apparently getting a little bit of ownership because he only costs 200, 300, but so does Trent Sherfield. I like that opportunity for Sherfield. On FanDuel, it's 65 versus 55, but I think it's reasonable to expect that both of these guys are going to get at least a couple of targets, and that's the kind of guy that wins these slates. You get one of those guys on one of those deep passes, and you're in business. 3.2 targets a game for Sherfield last year. Only a half a target for Hardy, but obviously picking up a lot of value. Both of these guys, like the projections show correctly that these are limited opportunities, but you've got to be opportunistic about those opportunities. Obviously, they got to deliver. They've got a downside to put a 0 in your lineup. But these are the guys that break these showdown slates. The backup tight end type guys are the guys that break these showdown slates that you just need to have in your player pool. So I think not the point of that was Allen's got a lot of weapons at his disposal, a lot of different guys to throw to. Cook out of the backfield, 5.63 yards per target, had a touchdown through the air, 180 yards. More threat on the ground. Should be the primary back. But he's got some help in the backfield this year as well with Latavius Murray, with Damian Harris, especially on like a nasty, sluggy kind of day. I don't think it's out of the question that these guys see some carries, especially, just bursted into the end zone type carries. Maybe they vulture the TD from the primary back. So I think both of these guys very much in play. But obviously Cook's your primary. Cook will be the more popular by far than those guys, and you're paying a lot more. 8,000, 12,000. But I think as a captain play, 12,000 on DK, 11,000 in the MVP role, certainly not out of the question on a day where we expect the quarterback maybe a little bit more limited. Maybe the environment has a little bit of an impact on the passing game. So I do think that the Buffalo run game is in play here. And I will spread out to some shares of Harris, to some shares of Lat Murray. Murray, always the frustrating touchdown guy, 6 on the season last year, 58.5 rush yards a game on 15.2 touches a game. Harris, 9.5 touches a game, gave us 3 touchdowns last year, 42 yards a game. So both guys viable. Both guys not the crazy big play types, but to at least get a handful of carries, 5-10 carries, burst the ball into the end zone. That's all we're really looking for these prices, especially Murray at 1,000, 1,500. I don't know how many times I captain Murray. Obviously, you're really hunting for the low-scoring game touchdown vulture type move there, and I don't think that's necessary. But at 1,000, I think he's definitely in the mix for flex shares. At 6,000 on the FanDuel slate, definitely in the mix for flex shares. You want to put the higher probability guys as your skill players into the captain spot, and then the flex spots are where the possible goes, right? You don't want too much of the just wild card dart throw possibles in the captain spots. Save your multipliers for the more likely guys, I think is the approach. At the tight end position, this is going to be an interesting one. The Bills went out and spent the 25th overall pick on a tight end after having Dawson Knox, who was an effective enough tight end, but not a premium downfield scorer or a downfield like target, but 6 touchdowns last year receiving. I knew 4 wasn't right. The 4 is the yards after the catch. 517 yards on a 7.9 average ADOT, 7.95 yards per target. He was an effective enough tight end, more of a red zone threat, more of a touchdown scorer than anything else. Kincaid is just more of a receiver, more of a stretch the field, a weapon type of a tight end. Last year at Utah, 890 yards on 12.7 yards per catch with 8 touchdowns. Had 8 touchdowns the year before on 510 yards, 14.2 yards per catch. So more downfield receiver just makes their offense a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more unique. Tons of draft capital. Rookie coming into, obviously going to be the primary. Going to get more of the looks, most likely, than Knox. But you can't convince me, especially in a showdown slate, for 5,000 compared to 5,400 on DraftKings, for 4,400 compared to 5,000 on DraftKings, and especially for 8,500 compared to a cheaper 7,000 on FanDuel, where he'll be way less popular. I can't be convinced that Dawson Knox doesn't have at least a little bit of possibility for a touchdown today. The model's basically splitting the baby between the two, a little bit more on the Kincaid side. I think he makes tons and tons of sense. I think you want to have shares of both of them. I'll probably have more Kincaid just because he's going to be the primary. He's the more likely guy to put up 60 yards and a score, where Knox is the more likely guy to give you 3 targets, 2 catches, 1 of them in the end zone type of a performance. Can definitely bend a slate. What do we miss on the Bills side of things? Mentioned Shakir, but 9.8 yard ADOT, not bad. 8.3 yards after the catch. Obviously some skills after the catch. Not sure how many catches that was total. Was seeing just 2 targets a game. Let's pull up Shakir real quick. I got him right here. 14 games, 10 catches, 20 targets. Didn't seem like it was many. That was last year. I think there's a little bit of upside there. Especially when, he's not at the dead bottom of the board prices, but probably going to get a few more looks. Fairly priced. It's not like these prices are going to break the bank. 75 on FanDuel, in the mix. And then just bottom of the board, like Quentin Morris, I don't think. I took him out of the player pool, I think. Or maybe he's just clinging to life. Nah, he's below 1 on FanDuel. So both these guys came out of my player pool. I don't think you're getting anything out of that. Let me click go on my second set of lineups. See, this is the problem. I'm trying to talk through doing the lineup builds. That's why I started at 6:45. So worst case scenario, I'd have a little bit of time on the back end. But yeah, I'm just not going to remember to keep on clicking that button and building these lineups. But I'll show you guys a little bit of the process because I do think that's important, and we're kind of flying through the analysis of the game. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, it's Aaron Rodgers. He'll be in the Hall of Fame soon enough. He's playing out the string here in New York. I said it before, I'll say it again. In a year in which Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer did not work out for the New York Mets, the New York Jets, with the exact same fan base as the New York Mets, are walking a tightrope by putting all their chips in the Aaron Rodgers basket. That just seems like the exact same move from the exact same franchise in different sports to me. The amount of times that works out for the Jets where it didn't work out for the Mets in the long term over the course of the season, I don't know. But I do think Aaron Rodgers is obviously a big piece of this slate. He projects out like he is. Priced fairly, as at least by comparison to his opponent on the other side, 9,800 on the DK slate. 16,000 versus 17,500 on the FanDuel slate. So an aggressive discount for Aaron Rodgers, who, let's face it, I mean, still a talented QB. 22 touchdown passes last year, 6.8 yards per pass attempt, 8 yards intended air yards per pass attempt. He's obviously got some weapons. Seemed like he was gelling a little bit with Garrett Wilson. He's got a good running game to work with. He brought over his pals, Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, so he's got a lot of familiarity on his new team. He's got a guy like Mecole Hardman, who I think could be super sneaky on this slate. Didn't look like Mecole was getting any kind of attention, ownership-wise, anywhere. I think that's an interesting option. I like him a little bit better than I like Randall Cobb in this spot. Because, I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, they're pals, but when was the last time Randall Cobb was super, super fantasy relevant? Last year, 1 touchdown, 417 yards. 9.5 yard ADOT is nice. 8.34 yards per target. That's great. Mecole gave us 8.74. Got in the end zone 4 times. 8.1 yard ADOT. Obviously, your primaries are here and here. Garrett Wilson got over 1,100 yards last year. 10.5 yard ADOT. Got in the end zone 4 times. Lazard got in the end zone 6 times. 12.5 yard ADOT. Good red zone threats. Good options up and down. But I definitely want to get into some of the depth on the Jets side of things. Whichever one, I assume Garrett Wilson will be by far the highest owned receiver. So I'm going to definitely make some plays around Lazard, around Mecole Hardman. I think Ty Conklin could be on the board for a touchdown. On a nasty day, if they don't succeed running the ball in, they're in the red zone. Conklin could get that red zone look. CJ Uzomah, if he gets on the field, 2-3 targets. We're not looking at a big-time target monster. 6,000 on the FanDuel slate, he's a mixer. 800, 1,200 on the DK slate, you better believe he's a mixer. Look for that touchdown. We're touchdown hunting around the possible with plays like that. Again, not in the captain role, but as a flex option, the tight ends on the Jets are in play. Randall Cobb's absolutely in play. I would not be completely averse to a minor investment in like Cobb shares, in Mecole shares at the captain role. It's not what we're really looking for. If you're doing that, you're probably playing the defenses in those lineups. You're looking for that really low-scoring weirdo game. Maybe you're playing some kickers in with those guys if you're captaining them. But it's not a great play. But I don't think they're completely off the board because they're not absolute zeros like a lot of these lower-end guys are. The running game for the Jets, a little bit murky. Dalvin, 12,000 on the FanDuel slate. A lot more affordable on the DK slate. 78. 11.7 in the captain role. Breece Hall paying a little bit more for him. 82, 12.3. 12.5 on the FanDuel slate. It's kind of split between both of these guys. I think you're definitely rostering them both. My priority will become whichever one of them is lower owned. But you've also got Michael Carter, who I have to think is at least going to see a few touches. I don't think he's off the board. He's a talented guy. So 10 touches a game last year. That should come down, obviously, with Dalvin in play. But I don't think he's completely off the board for some looks. 288 passing yards last year, or receiving yards last year. 5.33 yards per target last year. Breece had a 7.03 yards per target. 1 touchdown through the air. Dalvin had 2 touchdowns through the air. 5.27 yards per target. Pretty decent after the catch, obviously, because they're not catching it all that deep. I think there's a lot of ways that the Jets can play this offense. A lot of different ways that these target shares could come around in terms of who's getting the looks in the air out of the backfield, where the touches are going. So I just want an equal distribution, and I'll just kind of favor the guys that are getting a little bit less public ownership. It's primarily going to be split between these two. But there's a lot of room for a lot of different flex plays from this Jets offense. It's weird. With only 2 teams in action, there are some interesting plays here. If you go down the board on the Jets side, Brownlee, he could get involved. He's obviously very, very low projected. That's for a reason. He's probably not going to get that many looks. But the fact that they put him on the damn roster and he was a featured guy in the Hard Knocks and everything like that, he'll probably get a little buzzy because of stuff like that. But they put him on the roster because they think he's a talented guy. Gibson more on the special team side of things. Nick Bawden, probably just a fullback role, not projected at all. Took him out of my player pool. Gibson's out of my player pool, but Brownlee's in it. I don't know whether Rucker got into it or not. Wouldn't expect much there, since you've got both Conklin and Uzoma. Izzy is the other wild card at the running back position for these guys. Got hurt toward the end of training camp, but apparently is active and ready to go. He was a 5th round pick. They were excited about his performance in the preseason. It seems like he's going to be a viable part of this when he's fully healthy. 1,431 yards and 20 touchdowns, with 146 yards and a touchdown receiving at Pitt. 143rd overall, 5th round pick. Not a ton of draft capital in him, but a talented kid that they seem to be believing in. So a couple of touches, you never know. I feel like if he was fully healthy, we'd be talking about him a little bit more as somebody that they'd want to get a couple of touches to. Today, not fully healthy. I don't know that they put him in that situation, especially on an ugly rainy night. Like, there's probably just wait a week, give him the looks next week. Is Brownlee inactive, Ken? Thank you. I appreciate that note. I didn't notice that, so we'll take him out of the projections. You won't let me do that right now. Hang on one sec. Let me update that on the site. Showdown single game projections. Brownlee. Let me zero them out. I'm just going to put zeros. Not going to worry about the rest of it. Actually, just delete his row. And this has to go to 30. I realize that I have to set the rows in those projections tables. It's updated. That's how, by the way, don't let anybody tell you that it's really difficult to zero something out when you just need to take a guy out of the projections from any other site, because I just did it in that about 10 seconds, and I'm using exactly what the other people are using. But yeah, I realize you have to put to make it sortable, I have to have the exact number of rows that's in the table. I can't leave any other ones, even though they don't appear. I guess for the sort, it screws it up. So if you're trying to sort the by projections, by salary or whatever, it should work just fine for today's. Apologies that didn't work over the weekend, but I did get that figured out. And Brownlee is now out of that player pool. Let me take him out of my player pool. Dynamite note there. Thank you. Anybody else inactive that I talked about? Let me know, guys. I appreciate that. I had to obviously scramble to get on the air after the baseball show between these. So I think my primary value, honestly, for this stuff, like, you can fire up people who are more knowledgeable about football itself and, the ins and the outs and everything, the X's and the O's, as they say. My value here, I think, is talking about the DFS of it, right? So for anything I'm wrong about, anything I say that doesn't make sense, doesn't jive for you in football, I'm super interested in feedback. So obviously, just give me some info on the football side of things. If you guys spot things that are weird in the projections, if you guys spot players, obviously, that aren't playing, mention it. That helps me out. This is a team effort, gang. This is a conversation. What's up, Trav? Could be Travis says, I didn't know you did Showdown shows, Tower. I did one on Thursday. I didn't do one last night. Couldn't rally for that one. Would have just talked about how much Daniel Jones sucks anyway. And I think I got that proven out even more. Not that I needed it. But, yeah, that was an ugly game. But, yeah, didn't do one yesterday. Didn't end up on the air at all yesterday. Was just shot, basically, after being up for 48 straight hours. But, yeah, plan is to do one for every Showdown slate. Just because it's one of my favorite spots. Exclusively football. I don't really like Showdown for any of the other sports. But for football, with the monster prize pools, just the unique way that the football slates work, I actually really like it. And I did really, really well with it last year. So I'm hoping to Share some of that. Spread the knowledge. Spread the wisdom. No, none of it's knowledge or wisdom. Those are the wrong words. Spread the strategy of how to approach these things, and hopefully the good fortune of having them fall into your laps. Let's put it that way. So that's like up and down on a lot of the players. As Jake Swales says, a Cook versus Cook show out game. They are brothers, right? Melissa's here. What's up, Melissa? Happy Monday Night Football. Absolutely. Good to see you. Good to see everybody. If I didn't say hi to you, I didn't mean to skip you. James Sarcone, Otani scratched. So if you're playing, was he in the lineup originally? It'd be good to get him back if he ever manages to get back. Brees Hall active. We knew that. So let's look at... Let me just delete these. So I've gained no ground on the... I'll leave those. I just got to remember to take Brownlee out. He's probably only in a couple of them. Going to just make myself a quick note, gang. Hey, by the way, since it's the same notepad, can you guys read that? Top name, major values. Those are my notes. Top name. That was my guy. We talked about him on that marathon show. Had a ton of them. Didn't quite win me $1 million, but led to a nice day. That was my guy. He's going to be pissed. He's going to go at like 20% ownership next week. He's not going to be sneaky anymore. 15 targets yesterday for Puka. Woo, loved it. Anyway. So what was I going to do? I was going to grab some of these. I was going to click that again. Do this. And it goes in this file. All right, let me say X, Y. That's not working now. Maybe I won't show this. What? Why is that MVP ownership not working? Hang on, just trying to figure something out. If I can't figure out how to make it work on the fly here, then I'm not going to show it on the screen because it wouldn't make sense to, because nothing's working. Why is this? Oh, I bet I know what I did. No? Damn, guys. I really wanted to show you the pool. All right. We can do it this way. All right. We'll jump into it. I'll show it off anyway real quick. This is X. This is Y. All right, it's not exactly functional, but let me jump into it. The most important thing that I wanted to show off is the part that's not working, though. That is this one. And I got to resize it. Hold on. All right, so all I just did was drop a bunch of lineups. This is the actual sorting table that I use. And I refer to this a lot, so I thought it would make some sense to show it. But the part that is not working right now, I can't unhide all of those at the same time. Oh, this is going to get messy real quick. The part that's not working right now is this column because it's not pulling in the MVP ownership numbers, which it should be because I have those guys in here. So I just got to figure out what the hell is going on there. But that's going to be off the air. My point was going to be what I typically get is I'll have obviously percentages here, and then it calculates out the unique ownership, the potential for a lineup to be unique. So these are sorted by the projections up at the top. So this is the highest projected in this group. This would be like a 1 in, let's call it like 500 lineup, right? Every 500 people, there's going to be one of those in there in a 100,000 whatever entry field. So what I try and do is I sort these down, and anything that is less than 1 in 5,000 unique, I take out I do not play anything that's going to be less than 1 in 5,000. And that takes out a bunch of the most common lineups right away. So we talked about, like, differentiating through focusing on lowering salary and leaving money on the table or whatever. We talk about differentiation through just using unique players. This is yet another layer of trying to just get away from the public, because the biggest thing about Showdown is that we want to win, but we want to win with the fewest ties possible. So that's why I'm trying to get to just unique dynamic combinations of these things. So I take all those guys out of all those lineups out of my player pool. I wish I could show it. I'll fix it for next time. It's not even a fix for next time. The thing's working. There's just, I screwed something up when I was typing in those ownerships or whatever, and I'm not sure what to fix. But then this goes through and sorts. These are two other industry sources. One used to be Awesemo. Now it's RG's projections. And then one is a consensus rank. This one's a consensus that I put together using the consensus statistical projections. So it's just the non-fantasy based statistical projections. What do those say that lineup should do? Then these are two other fantasy sites. This is the average of all of them. This is mine. And then this is where ownership would go. It creates an overall score, and then it ranks those scores. And then you sort it by the ranking, and Bob's your uncle, as they say. So that's just kind of how I go about it. My intent was for that to look a little bit better. But with that, guys, Melissa asks, would it be completely crazy to play a Hardy contrarian lineup? What's his ownership? Or a Hardy captain lineup? This is FanDuel. It would depend on how highly owned he is in that one, in that contest, in that role. It's probably not the greatest idea in the world. Like I said, I prefer to get my my captain shares, my my main plays, my multiplier plays. I prefer to get them from more the probable field than the possible field. Not that he's not a possible scoring leader, but a few things would have to go in interesting directions for that to really come through. Also, just looking at where he's owned on, that's a flex ownership on FanDuel. Where is he on DK? Let me see. He is getting... Oh, well, that's... Hold on. A lot of variables to that question that I'm thinking it through. Ownership on DK. The hell is he? Yeah, it doesn't look like anybody's doing it. So you wouldn't... Ownership-wise, you wouldn't be screwing yourself up. The idea that you're getting a $300 captain who will probably get a couple of targets, you still probably just need to get him in the end zone, though. Like a 70-yard game and a bunch of catches doesn't really do enough for you there, even at price. It's probably not the greatest move in the world. I'd rather probably get to one of the medium projected guys at medium price and just take my value captain that way. I think it's a little bit extreme. More of a flex player. It's definitely going to help you buy a lot. I wouldn't, like, if you're building 150, Melissa, I wouldn't necessarily take it out. I would, if I've got that in 3 to 5 out of 150, and it's just totally unowned, that's fine. On a Showdown slate, I like to get weird. You got to get unique. You got to embrace the possible. So it's not off the board. Let's put it that way. Ken Woodhouse says Jets O-line with question marks. Bills could dominate that line like the Cowboys. Yeah, I do think there's a lot of upside for this to be a defensively oriented game. Maybe we get into the kicker getting a little bit of scoring going. Lower scoring, like if I was betting this, the under, I don't know, I don't have it like projected out for that, but like the under's feeling kind of nice. Two very good defenses, rainy night, ugly, a lot of options to go around as far as where they want to put the ball, but a lot of potentially limited opportunities. I think I kind of like it. Trey's second highest projected ceiling lineup has Hardy at the captain. There you go. So again, that's when you can put those $300 value guys in there. If he happens to get you enough, just a solid handful of points. If he gets in the end zone, you're probably home. If he gets you that, I said the 70 yards and a handful of catches wouldn't necessarily get you there. I might unwind that a little bit just because he only costs 300 in that role. He's so cheap. Maybe there's a little bit of potential there. And the thing is that it just buys you all those combinations. What I would say is don't play the most likely next combination. Don't put Hardy, both quarterbacks and the top 2 running backs in there, or the top 2 wide receivers in there, because that's what everybody's going to do with that lineup. So even with a lineup like that, you still want to get different, because the last thing you want is for that Hardy play, that sharp Hardy play in the captain role to come through, and you're still tied with 200 other people, because the 200 people who entered that in used the exact same lineup. You get me? So just make like one different decision in your flex spots, even in a Hardy captain lineup. Trey says, I just ran some sims and not much cast lineup of him. Not sure what you mean there. Throwbacks is late. He says, oh, wow, I'm late. Yeah, I started a little bit early, bud, and I'm going to punch out in just another 2 minutes and wish everybody good luck. But fortunately, you just slide that. Where's my, I'm like over here. You just slide that thing on back that way, and you rewind back to the beginning. Oh, captain. Of course, Trey. I'm dumb. Yeah, and that's it. It's a dart throw. But it's one that, with anybody with the reasonable idea of a couple of targets, especially at those super, super cheap discounts on DK where it's $300, they're not out of play at best. At worst. Throwback says field goal overs for both. I think that makes sense. Diggs could have a big game. That's true every single week that Diggs plays. But yeah, he's also got to show up his brother from his brother's performance last night, as they were saying on the broadcast. A lot of brothers coming through the Meadowlands this week. We got the Cook brothers. We got the Diggs brothers. I don't know if there's any others. Jake Swale says Cook is going to be the Jets back that you want. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm a fan. I probably overused him last year. But especially with the idea that maybe they're going to be easing Brees back into regular season action. Certainly going to get his touches, don't get me wrong. But from a volumes perspective, could be that Dalvin gets a little bit more looks, and obviously is supremely, supremely talented. Cook combo, not bad throwbacks. That could be interesting. Diggs and Wilson. Yeah, anytime you can go star, and those guys at the same position that are going to be competing for the highest score positionally, not like competing like they know that they're competing for the highest score. They're just out there doing their thing. But for our purposes, if you're getting those 2 position guys and they're going to be highly owned, but as long as you're putting them together with other stuff, yeah, take off those those top guys, top positional guys at any spot. I do think rush, as Throwback says, I do think some rush yards are definitely going to be in play today. Probably going to be a ground-oriented game. Cook is going to be the bell cow, especially early on in the season. Makes sense. Yeah, look, they didn't bring him in for nothing. It makes a ton of sense. They're obviously in a win-now mode. See close to 20 touches for Cook. Where did I have... Let's see if I can close these and open that real quick. I've got to get these files consolidated. Oh, that's right. I don't bring it out. I don't extend it out. It's just it's an over-under for his normal volume of touches. I do have it going over. Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot for Cook. A little bit low on Josh Allen in the industry. I think that's reasonable. Reasonably close to most of the skill players around the industry, I think. But we want to get different. We want to get a little bit weird. We want to embrace the possible in our flex positions. We want to go to some skill players in our captain spots, our multipliers, particularly where we're multiplying salaries. Quarterbacks, obviously, on FanDuel, much, much more likely in that MVP, the multiplier spot. I think that's clear. I think we've explained our way through that again enough. But just to put a fine point on the end of the show, that salary multiplier is crucial when you compare site to site. Quarterbacks win a whole lot more in the multiplier spot on FanDuel because their salary isn't multiplied. As typically the most expensive guy, that does have a limiting downstream impact when you put the quarterback in the captain spot on DK and you're paying more. That said, with Josh Allen on deck and a cheap Aaron Rodgers, I do think out of all the slates we talk about this year, this is one of the more viable captain quarterback spots. But I do have Josh Allen projected a little behind the industry. All right, guys. I think that'll be about punch-out point. It's around 45 minutes of show. We're around 40 minutes to the start of the slate. A little bit more. But I got to get some lineups built. I got to get some sorting going. So I think that's a good punch-out point. I'm sure our pals across town are doing a show right now. If you need a little bit more live, blow-by-blow, minute-by-minute information coming to you, fire them up. They always do a good job. With that, I was trying to feed Emax some plays last night when he was on the show, and I wasn't doing mine. I was doing Albert Brooks from Broadcast News. I even sent him the clip of Brooks going, "I say it here, and it comes out over there." With that in mind, gang, I really appreciate you guys hanging out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, tell your friends. We'll be doing this all season. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Don't tie my lineups. Actually, I'd welcome it. Nice little 10-way tie, but it's only 10 of us. Let's do it. See you guys.